All right. Do both need to be turned on? Are we good to go, Jessica? Should we good? Yeah. Okay. Sounds good? But, okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. I know registration lines were long, but welcome. And we will have an exciting panel, so I'm glad you could make it here. My name is Tara Shuklovsky, and I'm the founder and CEO of Technovation. It's a large technology entrepreneurship competition for girls. And today the panel is really all about sharing lessons and mistakes of what we've been doing with the idea of how can we reach many, many more girls. What scales, what leaves a deep impact, what not to try, and what should we try going forward. And I want to start by saying the intersection of girls' education, technology, and climate is a very powerful one. Let me see, sorry. There we go. So, and there's a new book that also just came out by the Earth for All group, I think, and it talks about 5 turnaround strategies that we need to counter the problem that we are facing. And out of the 5, number 1 is reducing poverty, number 2, reducing inequalities, number 3 is empowering women, number 4, reducing food waste, number 5, green energy. So you can see that empowering girls and empowering women is such a fundamental lever for not just addressing climate change, but also sustainable development. And here are some of the reasons why. So when you empower girls, they of course can contribute to their GDP, lifting their families out of poverty. Educated mothers raise healthier children, so you have much stronger health outcomes. And when you have educated women, their communities return to peace much faster after conflict. And lastly, this is by Project Drawdown. It said educating girls is the 7th most effective strategy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And so I don't know of any other strategy that has so many long-term impacts. And so I hope that this convinces you that the best investment is actually to empower girls. And so then the question is, well, how can we do that? Because no country in the world at the moment has gender equality. And so the session today is all about how do we empower millions and millions of girls and bring them to be technology leaders, especially in the climate space, because at the moment, climate change impacts the most vulnerable communities, and only 2% of climate organizations, startups are led by women of color. So there's a huge potential right there. And so I just want to share some of the strategies that has worked for Technovation. We have reached roughly 400,000 participants all around the world, and this is kind of like our secret checklist of how do you develop a program that speaks to many, 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 many girls, regardless of their backgrounds, their social economic status, their language, their ethnicity, their culture. So number 1, for a teenage girl, you need to provide choice. So this goes very against top-down school-based programs where you have a rigid curriculum and young people are not given the option and the freedom to choose. So choice is key. Number 2, we are all humans. We love working with each other. We love meeting each other. We love congregating in conferences. And so working in teams for a meaningful problem is also a very, very important trick. Number 3, and this is a very hard one to do, but instead of just teaching children or young people about facts, skills, even technical skills, those are never interesting enough to really make a change in your identity. You have to help a young person, even adults, practice exploring their sense of purpose, their sense of identity, because as they change, their world changes, they need to keep asking this question, who am I? What is my purpose? What can I do? And so a good education program actually really builds around this as a pillar. The last two are more sort of logistical. You need warm, supporting mentors who say, I believe in you. You can do this. And lastly, which we almost always forget as educators, it's not just enough to have a coding program or a curriculum. It needs to be physiologically thrilling for the students to remember this all their lives. And so a good way to do that is to have a competition or some sort of drama built in where you can get your heartbeat racing. So here, this is what Technovation is, and I'll just go a little bit into it so that you have a sense of where we're coming from. So it's a 12-week program where girls work in teams with mentors, and they pick a problem that is aligned with one of the Sustainable Development Goals, and they either build a mobile app or an AI prototype. And they also launch a business plan to take this app to market. And this is our footprint. So this is why I was saying that this model that we have, that I shared, that checklist, it has worked across so many backgrounds and cultures. And the reason is that at the end of the day, we are humans. We all need to sleep. We all need to eat. We all are moved by similar experiences. So there's more that brings us together than there's what makes us dissimilar. And so it is possible to have a robust formula, actually, for scale. This is a little bit deeper going into the Technovation curriculum. It's completely free. It's online. And as you can see, part of it is based on technology, but most of it is really about real-world problem solving, the entrepreneur's journey. Because if any one of you have ever started a program, an initiative, you know it's not easy. You learn so much about yourself, so much about the problem, and that's what we're trying to give in this curriculum, this building this sense of self-efficacy as a leader. So here are some examples of climate apps that girls have created over the years. We've also had many girls from Egypt participate in Technovation. This one I really liked a couple of years ago. It was to help educate farmers to actually prevent burning straw and polluting the air. So their mobile app was firstly educating farmers, but also tracking where there were straw fires. Lots of interesting apps across the world around weather prediction, weather sensing, because the sensors are not that prevalent and they really impact agriculture, which is where most of our the low-income countries get their income from. Let me see. So this is some long-term data about the impact of this program, and I do want to highlight that it has, because we've been running for 17 years and we've been collecting a lot of data, it is really, really exciting to see that long-term Technovation really does change a girl's trajectory into what kinds of college programs they pursue, but also their careers. So 76% of our alumni continue to pursue STEM degrees, and that is an immediate pathway to higher earning powers, greater financial stability, and overall much stronger sense of self-efficacy as a leader. And so this is something that I haven't actually seen any other program have this kind of long-term data at this large scale, and I would love to hear from you if you know. But this is why we came back to that checklist of you have to invest in the people so that the girls have that structure, long-term support structure to support them even in their career and beyond. And this is how we measure success. Yes, increase in skills is very important, but what we really care about is their growth as an entrepreneur, as a leader, and eventually increasing their financial capability, because that's what will support them to actually change their communities and their own lives. And here are just some examples of these young women. I'll mention Winnie. She's from Tanzania, and she participated in Technovation, And then later on, as an alumna, she started a business because during COVID, she saw one woman really struggling to grow things on her farm. And she started to question what would be some natural fertilizers to use, some sustainable fertilizers to use. So she worked with the local university and did some research on developing cocoa peat, which is used from coconut husks. And then she started her own business, and now she's selling cocoa peat to, I think, 200 farmers. She employs 25 people, and has become a real champion for girls as entrepreneurs. And I think a very interesting part about what technology can do is, as I was telling Hannah earlier, that climate doesn't know any artificial country boundaries. And so there's no reason why you cannot develop an app that actually helps tackle a problem across multiple regions. And that's what Vinny's able to do. Here are some other examples. Michelle has made an AI-based recognition system to clean Lake Victoria in Kenya. And she uses this AI-based system to collect all the plastic out of the lake. Just amazing, amazing young women who you would want as your leaders. So I'll just end by playing this short video that shows an example of an app that these girls have been working on, and they released for this session. So.
10% of the richest people in the world use more than 70% of the world's resources.
For instance, Americans own around 200 pieces of clothing when they only really need 7 outfits.
Our generation is greatly affected and attracted by social media, beautiful Instagram pics, trends, fast fashion, and online shopping. And while all those things seem rewarding and desirable, there is a huge impact on the environment, as overproduction and consumption lead to disasters on a global scale.
Our ideal is to create an all-encompassing responsible consumption app that serves as not only a hub for responsible clothing stores, but also a place for users to see how they can reuse and recycle their clothes.
Being the Gen Z representatives ourselves, we know exactly what we need. A social marketplace with a selection of unique, new and vintage clothes from local shops and small businesses, short interactive videos, ability to buy things within the app, integration of trends, combination of all of these things is already in our app. Option A.
Building technology to tackle these big real-world problems has changed my life and my perspective in that I know that I can actually tackle these large-scale problems now in a tangible sort of way.
We need more role models, and celebration of female leaders will encourage girls to pursue their dreams, careers, and interests in tech.
A world with more women and female entrepreneurs and leaders driving change would look like a world where everyone's willing to work together towards a common goal. My advice to leaders and how we can actually get there is to make sure that women know that they have a space where they're welcome. And with that space, I think we can be really powerful.
So now we can get into the actual panel, and I want to continue this theme of asking experts their particular view of what has worked and what hasn't. And so I'll start with Renata Alvarenga. She is a master's public policy candidate at Harvard Kennedy School and a Belfer Young Leader Student Fellow. And she is a prominent voice in youth, gender, and climate justice, and started Empodera Clima when she was 22 years old. Oh, sorry. So Renata, tell us a little bit about what does Empodera Clima do?
Thank you. Let's see. Is this working? Yeah. Okay. Yes, perfect. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for this amazing kind of set of the scene, because it really, I think, gives us all the idea of why we need girls' education for climate, why we need to empower young women and girls for climate. And that's exactly what we've been working to do with Empodera Clima. Empodera Clima means Empower for Climate in Portuguese or Spanish. It's a Brazil-based youth-led org. And the idea is that we produce content that's made by youth and for youth on gender and climate justice, because we want to make sure that what's happening here at COP is more accessible and easy to understand for young people who don't have the opportunity to be here, which is the majority of us, who don't get to have climate education of quality at schools. And so with Empodera Clima, we're trying to build those communities and that knowledge and that empowerment through education, through webinars, events, capacity building sessions, specifically on gender and climate justice, on intersectionality, as a way to really inform these young people, especially from the Global South, from Latin America and the Caribbean, to learn about this and then be able to take action. And the only way that we can do that is if we're able to reach those audiences. So we translate a lot of content to Spanish, French, and of course English, but also try to make it fun and engaging to young people who maybe are not as interested in climate science but are interested in something very cool like this, such as being young entrepreneurs and being able to access these decision-making spaces such as COP.
So it's really cool. If you go to their website, you can kind of see how social media is a big channel for change. So what have you found has worked to engage young people's attention, and more interestingly, what doesn't work?
Definitely. I think social media grew to be our biggest platform. We have a website, so our database is kind of like our big platform for people to access gender and climate content. But truly, it is through putting that work on Instagram that we're able to have more impact, reach bigger audiences. So I was looking a little bit at the statistics, and something that's striking away, but maybe not as surprising, is that our audience is 82% women. And I think that shows that we need to bring more allies into the movement, right? We need to bring more men to really be interested in gender and climate. And so we're trying to shape our content in a way that's, hey, you know, feminism is about everyone and not just women. So this is something that we've been trying to do, but difficult. Something else is about the age groups that we're trying to reach. Our biggest audience, 50%, is between 25 and 34 years old. And so I think that shows that a lot of young women, young people in general, are interested. But we're still hoping to reach that more intergenerational aspect. And honestly, I think social media is a reflection of society, right? And I think we need more older people to join this movement and really advocate for young people and young women in climate spaces. And also having more teenagers, more children, right, involved. And I think that's a reflection of how we're still not reaching, you know, schools. We're still not reaching these spaces where we're talking with the people that are most vulnerable to climate, so children, for example, but are not maybe able to access social media at this point, and how can we get to that? So those are two data points on gender and also age that I wanted to bring out. But then in terms of what's working and what's not working, I think looking at our most liked and engaging posts, the most liked posts and engagements are related to elections and politics. So we recently had elections in Brazil, presidential elections, and we posted a lot about where is climate justice in the national plans of our presidential candidates, and where the local representatives that are submitting themselves for candidacy, talking about climate justice and gender. And so that type of content is really engaging, and I feel like it really shows that young people and young women want to be politically active and want to be a part of that. And then the other part is open positions, youth activism. So it really shows young people want to be involved. Sometimes they'll see this really cool content online, but they don't know how to get to that. Do I join this NGO? Do I apply for a scholarship to attend a COP? So there's multiple ways, but I think it's hard to know exactly how to reach those groups, right? So we're seeing those engagements. Now it's about how to bridge that gap between what's happening on social media and in real life.
Those insights are really cool, because I feel I'm new to social media. I'm always trying to keep up and figuring out like what content is not boring and old and stodgy. Like so tips and tricks from the experts are awesome. So Renata, you bring so much energy and enthusiasm to the conversation, especially to field like politics, like even to talk about it, because you can feel very disillusioned that nothing is happening, no change is happening. And I think one side of the way youth are labeled are as activists. And if you search up activists, the images that you see are all of angry young people, right? And I think my experience hasn't been that of young people being angry. Our experience has been of young people really working hard to make change. And so, and I see that in your case as well. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on how do we change how youth are not labeled as, I think rebels is good, but I think rebel builders, right? Like you also need young people's ideas to build cool things, right? And innovation comes from new places. So I'm curious what your thoughts are around this balance between activism energy, but also towards constructive building.
I really like this question because I think we've seen recently on social media a lot of these more radical acts of, advocating for climate justice, such as with damaging artwork, for example, which has been quite controversial, I would say, especially and specifically within the youth movement, as to whether that represents us or it doesn't. And there's mixed opinions. But I think at the bottom line, we need to make sure we pass on the message that there's this radical actions happening, but what's more important is the message, right? We want to make sure that we have climate justice, intergenerational equity, gender equality at the front line of these discussions. And there's different ways that people go about it. But what's really important to understand is that even though there are these acts that are controversial, there are the activisms on the street, which I think are highly praised, the Fridays for Future movement and all of these activities. But seeing the big picture is about understanding that there's all types of youth empowerment, right? And I think the one that we advocate the most for at Empodera Clima and in the gender and climate justice movement is being part of these spaces. So we're here at COP. There's more and more of young people over the years. I've been attending COP since COP 21, so it's been 7 years. Almost out of my voice now because it's been a week of a lot of activism, but I think we're getting more space, but we're still here in the kind of non-negotiation zone, right? So I think my message is for us to bring young people into the negotiation room, see young people as negotiators, because we have data, you've shown it here, and when we have more representation, more diversity in the actual kind of decision-making spaces room, we just have better agreements, we have more just agreements, more ambitious agreements when it comes to climate, when it comes to sustainable development. And so seeing youth as equal partners and stakeholders, I think is kind of like the key thing that we can do. We have to be in the streets, we have to do that pressure, because I think if we don't do that, we don't get as much ambition in government, for example, in international policy making. But at the same time, we need to be seen as those really, equal partners, kind of policymakers in that sense, even though we're not really in those spaces. It's about time we change that. So I think that's kind of where we need to tackle from now on, and really seeing young people as important stakeholders in this fight for climate action.
Thank you, Renato. I think I'll hand it over to Hannah now. Hannah, I'm going to skip your last name. Can you say your last name again?
Hello? Oh, yeah. Hannah Sahachia.
Yeah. Sahachia. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you, Hannah. Hannah is the youth engagement lead at GenU, which is a program of UNICEF, and has done a lot of work supporting young youth entrepreneurs, specifically around climate. So, Hannah, maybe tell us a little bit more about why you care about this.
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone, really nice to be here. First, I'd like to say I really liked the way that you kind of contextualize the reason why we're here. I love what Technovation is doing and the impact it's having on young girls across the world. Impressive work on the nexus of gender, climate, and the digital space, the technology space. I think that's exactly where a lot of the solutions around what we're gathered here today are all about. So congratulations on all that work, and congratulations to my co-panelists here for the impressive activism that you're doing in this space as well. I've been working in this space myself for over 10 years. I come from a refugee background. As a girl, trying to find my space, trying to bring forward what young girls that are from marginalized backgrounds can bring to the table. That's kind of fueled my my passion and desire in being in this space. And so the reason why I'm part of Generation Unlimited, a public-private youth partnership, and one of the first of its kind in the world, is precisely that. So maybe going back to Generation Unlimited, it's this partnership platform anchored in UNICEF, which primarily focuses on building skills and opportunities for the largest cohort of young people this planet has seen, 1.8 billion young people. It's a very ambitious goal, but precisely because we're a partnership platform, we strongly and firmly believe that with partners such as yourselves and a range of public, private, and primarily youth partners, we can definitely achieve that. Our focus within Generation Unlimited is skilling in the space of skilling for jobs, skilling for entrepreneurship, and skilling for social impact, with a focus on gender, climate, and technology. So really happy to hear that a lot of the partners here today focus precisely on that. So we strongly believe in the power of partnership, and we make sure that every single initiative that we're building within the skilling space has these three major components embedded into them. One particular feature of GenU that I'm really proud of is the fact that we work in partnership with young people. So really happy to hear that this resonates across the board. We have young people in our board, in our Global Leadership Council. We have a whole young people's action team we work with on every single program. And we have staff that are young people, which isn't necessarily the case with a lot of organizations that speak about youth engagement and youth partnerships. So yeah, every single program that we've developed and run in over 60 countries at this point has been co-created, ideated, prototyped, peer-reviewed, implemented, and monitored and evaluated with young people, with youth-led organizations, and with the young staff and young people's action team that we run. I'm happy to say that over 60% of them are young girls. We really strive to make sure that we're taking into account the marginality factors and the fact that young girls, because of socioeconomic factors, because of a range of bottlenecks and barriers they have in their own communities, are generally less pushed forward and inclined to be part of such decision-making tables. And we really want to make that change. We really want to flip the script and work with partners that make sure to change this. Yeah.
So Hannah, what have you seen? I mean, I think your goal of reaching 1.6 billion or that's huge, right? Like, is that most of the world's young people?
That's
right?
all of the world's young people.
All of the world's young people. So what have you seen work at scale?
Yeah, thank you. So it is an ambitious goal indeed, and no organization, no partner can do this by themselves. And what we've seen work at scale is partnerships. Every single program that we run is done in partnership with the governments, in partnership with the private sector, in partnership with youth-led organizations, with civil society organizations, and grassroots organizations. That's pretty much what makes the wheels turn. I personally do not believe any organization has the skill sets to tackle every single bottleneck in this very, very complex issue. So when we're working with young girls in the climate and green entrepreneurship space, we need to make sure that the governments are the ones we're working with in enabling the policy environment. We're working with the private sector in making sure there's mentorship schemes, there's apprenticeships, internships, and kind of job shadowing opportunities for young girls in
Hannah,
this space.
What's your favorite example of it all working together really, really well?
Yeah, we have a range of programs. I would pretty much bring up one where we celebrated here at COP just a few days ago. It's called Imagine Ventures. It's a partnership program focused on building entrepreneurial skills and mindsets for young people with a focus on green entrepreneurship and climate. At COP, we celebrated the winners of this challenge just a few days ago, and we had some very, very impressive initiatives coming from young people in tackling head-on climate issues. It's a program that we're working with governments in over 60 countries, with the private sector, with young people themselves are doing peer-to-peer mentorship, the implementation, and so on. And we've, as I said, we're in over 60 countries with the program. Millions of young people have gone through the program, and we're kind of supporting with a whole support system with mentorship, seed funding, with peer-to-peer support, technical advice, skill building, and so on. So really tackling it through a comprehensive approach.
So what have you seen not work? Like if we wanted to go ahead and try something, what would we learn from you to say not?
Yeah, so one of the key things that doesn't work is the flip side of what I was saying, not designing with the user. So it sounds very intuitive, but I was surprised to see how many organizations that deliver and develop programs for young people don't develop them with them. They develop them with the experts. But the experts are the young people because they're the ones that are subject to the programs. And Tara, you mentioned it earlier, if the program is boring, if the program isn't resonating with the young people, doesn't have the thrill, the physiological effect in young people, then it's simply not going to work. There's going to be attrition, the attention span is going to dwindle, and so on. So you really need to work with young people, with design, with the user, to make sure that the programs are successful. And that's a mistake that happens more often than not. And then secondly, not taking into consideration the socioeconomic and policy factors at a country level. You could have a fabulous program at the global level, but if you implement it in Macedonia versus Brazil versus Congo, they're going to have a very different contextual adaptations for a number of reasons. And so working with the partners on the ground to adapt it is a best practice and a mistake if not done so.
Oh, we have our third panelist, Runa. You made it. Welcome. I know it's been difficult to come here, but you made it, so welcome. And Runa, that was just in time. So Hannah just finished talking about the awesome work that UNICEF has been doing. And allow me to introduce Runa Khan. She is the Malala Education Champion, but also an incredible director and founder of an organization from Bangladesh called Friendship. And I've been just in awe of the impact that Friendship has. Runa, do you want to take a minute before you?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm really, really pleased to be here. So I'll tell you a little bit about my work, and then we can move on to questions, or if you have the questions that you can ask me.
I had one question because I know your work is so broad.
Yes.
I was curious. I know you've been working a lot in northern Bangladesh. And so can you tell us a little bit about these people there? I was actually surprised to learn that there are so many islands, because I always thought that Bangladesh had islands in the south, but I didn't realize that they were. And so can you tell us a little bit about the state of these people and the challenges they face, and then what Friendship is doing there?
Okay, thank you very much. So one more question, please. How many minutes do you want me to speak for? 2-3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because, you know, the story of my life, it's 20 years, and I tell you 24 hours is not enough. So, let's take Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a country with 170 million people. It's 1/4 the size of France, 52% underwater, and you have 3 of the biggest rivers in the world falling into the sea, the Bay of Bengal. And these rivers sometimes can hold the city of Paris between their banks, flowing sometimes at 10 to 14 knots. And then you have the coastal islands with the rivers coming in that force. And you can understand a land which is built of silt is in a constant state of flux. So on these, of course, and it's only about 5 meters above the sea level on average. So here you have people who are constantly migrating, and you don't realize that 50 to 60% of the people are somewhere connected with rivers, but there are millions of people who lose their homes every year. I have met somebody who lost their home 62 times in their lifetime, and the last 40 times was within the last 10 years. And every time you move, you are becoming poorer and poorer. And in a context like this, so many perspectives come into mind between climate justice, with gender issues, violations that are happening, all hidden issues which are there in society, in an underprivileged society. And where does education come in? But education is still second to suffering, because suffering comes first. When you've cut your arms, you want to have that fixed before you even think of empowerment. And that is how we started working with health. We are serving about 7.5 million people direct service access every year in the organization. We work very intensely with values. And why I'm saying this is in the climate context, with education, with health, with development, awareness. If you do not work with deep values, which are not your limiting factor, but the very essence on which you work, you do not make long-term sustainable impacts, because people do not internalize the work which you do with them. So that is extremely important, and that's why we kind of keep that in the fore. The conditions of the people. Let's look at an island, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. In this island, there is nothing, not even a shop where people can go and buy something. Forget about electricity. The government has set up a school with all good intention. Teachers cannot come to it because they will not traverse the river when there is a flood or when it's raining. They will just not come to it. You cannot reach a healthcare system for whatever emergencies. And on this island, which is so poor, the only source is the land that you have, or the river that you have, and perhaps you get some fish. Perhaps, because so much of non-climate work is being done on the rivers in terms of embankments, etc., which are also very needed. So we needed to work with communities, and I would say that if there is one strength that we have got in the organization, which actually is working very well for the last 20 years, is the fact that we do not take what comes to us as projects. We take the community as our goal and empowering the community as a goal. So we try to raise the community to a level of awareness, health, education, income, access, and then linking them up to the main system of the government so that even when we are not there, they can be empowered.
So I know your work has had some very, very awesome success stories. I think some of the girls you've been educating have gone on to universities, especially from these regions, which seems amazing, right? Like knowing where they're coming from. So it speaks volumes about the capacity building that you've been doing. So I'm curious if you could put it in terms of funding. I think if you want to inspire funders to provide long-term commitments, can we put some numbers on, say for instance, how much would it cost a donor to support a girl for say 10 years to dramatically increase her chances of going into university? Are we talking about $500 a year for 10 years? Because that's still not much, right? I'm trying to understand what is the amount that would change her career path.
Will you give me 2 minutes to explain how we work, then you will understand. So in this island, you hardly find anybody who can read, write, or do mathematics. So we take community people based on their character and their values, and their acceptance in the society. We train them to become teachers. We've got a few hundred of them in the few hundred schools that we've got. And after we train them, there are 3 government examinations, grade 5, grade 8, and high school. So we have very different modality of working. For the primary school, the teachers can teach. And I tell you, we have not had one failure and 98% average over the last 15 years in the national examination. Just to tell you that the quality which is taught by people who you think cannot teach. Then you move to the secondary and the high school level where we use technology, and we have solar panels, we have screens, and we have teachers from the mainland who do the classes, and that is being with the facilitator shown in the class, and they have interaction with the teachers and taught. And again, it's been incredible because we are far above the national average of A pluses, A's, and passes. We've only throughout the history of our organization had one failure. So the cost is separate at separate levels. The cost of funding a child in the primary level for 1 year is about 150 euros. The cost of a secondary school approximately comes to about 300 euros. And then we have a career guidance cell, which we also link it to, so that we prepare them in English or whatever they want to do. They want to become nurses. They need certain skills. So we prepare them in ICT skills or English or as needed for the universities that they're wanting to go to, or even professional work that they want to go to. So we include that also. And for a university in Bangladesh, if they can get into the national university, it's not much. It's less than $1,000 a year. However, if you want to put them into the international university, where we have 7 young children from here, young girls who have gone, that is $3,000 per year for them, for the tuition, and a little bit for their hand, for their expenses. And that is to be done for 5 years. So it's not rocket science, nor is it very expensive. The point is, are you being able to do it? Mm-hmm. And I think beyond the cost, there are many things where cost does not have to be enormous. Yeah. It's the systems which need innovation and putting together of elements which works, understanding, incorporating failures, restarting.
And that's what you guys are doing, right?
That's exactly what
they're a
doing.
Great partner. So to wrap up, I think we have one last question that we go through the panel, and it is to sort of build on this question of, well, how would you mobilize, build infrastructure to empower millions of girls? So we'll start with Renata. There are about maybe like 25 million teenage girls in Brazil. So what would you need to reach all of them, or maybe like 70% of them?
Thank you. And honestly, it's a great pleasure to be on this panel with you all. It's so empowering, and it's Gender Day at COP. So it's a really, really amazing day to just have powerful women talking about climate justice and climate empowerment. So I think to reach all the teenage women in Brazil, honestly, it needs really big scale and empowerment action because Brazil is a very unequal country, right? So how do we reach the young women that are in the southern region in Rio and São Paulo, and also the young indigenous women in the Amazon, the young indigenous women in other parts of Brazil, or just, people that are in these different kind of levels in terms of intersectionality. I think there's a lot to be said about a messaging that resonates with different realities, because again, I think being here at COP is a highly privileged space, and we tend to forget that there's a whole reality out there that, if you bring this knowledge, if you bring the gender action plan and the great work that's being done here at COP directly to these groups, you won't really get an answer. So we talk a lot about tropicalizing these concepts to our local realities, and I think it's the same everywhere in the Global South. So not just about language, but about really reaching those groups and seeing them eye to eye at a different level from what we have at the international level. So I think doing that, having a massive campaign that includes different partners, you talked about partners, it can't just be civil society. We're tired, it's been a rough couple years in Brazil. And, I think we need government allyship, we need government support, participatory processes so that we are able to get to these spaces. We need businesses to really commit to not only, net zero and all of that nice, fancy language about carbon offsets and everything else, but really commit to climate justice, really commit to inclusion in their boards, in their actual internal work. And I think that's how we're going to be able to reach those people and not only reach teenage women in Brazil, but get them to these spaces. Because honestly, again, this is the only way we're going to change the scenario. It's the 20s up. We don't have that much more time. So it's about time that we're, bring those groups together. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And great to be here.
What are your thoughts, Hannah? I know Genu is reaching billions of young people, but what if we were to focus on one country and like India has, I think, 158 million teenage girls. So what would you do?
Yeah, hello? Yeah, I think it's working. Great, yeah. So my co-panelist here mentioned innovation in systems. I think that is one of the key ways in which we reach scale and we reach a large number of young people. Systems thinking approach, working with partners in the government, working with partners in the private sector, and making that connection, teaching the skills of the future to young people through systems is how we reach a lot of young people. Does that happen easily? No. Has it been tried? It has. At Genu, how we're trying to make this change is by bringing in private sector partners that really have a lot of influence in the job market to work with the governments and work in tandem with young people and a range of other stakeholders to make curricula more fluid, to make change in systems more innovative and more dynamic, so that the skills that are being taught in schools in India are the skills that are needed for the future of jobs, for the present of jobs as well. So I would say connecting the schools to the private sector while young people are at the center of this action is how we reach a large number of young people in India. What we've been trying to do and what we're doing already in India is working with the governments of different states in India and incorporating entrepreneurial mindset curriculum in schools. So a large number of young girls are exposed to entrepreneurship mindset, and coupling that with initiatives such as Imagine Ventures, where young people get mentorship, get seed funding, and a whole range of support opportunities so they can thrive. That is how we reach the large number of girls in India and beyond.
Thank you very much. Amazing. I mean, both of you have come up with such strong... So let me step back a little bit and just say a few things about, one, that we can't do it alone. No organization can do this alone. Why are we wanting, and what is it that we are actually wanting the girls to do? Is it just education? It's not. It's the strength which we need to imbue in them. So it goes beyond education. Just being educated and then doing nothing is not enough. They need to have strength. So when we are educating, we need to ensure that also happens. 3, none of us actually know what to do for everybody. And this humility we must have. Neither the people who have the money, nor the academicians, nor the governments, nor the international organizations, not even the local organizations. We don't know how to do it for everyone. Keeping the learning and this innovation going for each area, understanding the need of that area deeply and how to actually reach the target. Make the target your goal and not the tools of getting the target your goal. So often we are lost in the tools and not in the target. And I want to end with a little story that we have on what we are doing to spread climate change, ethics, and understanding. So we have a kind of unwritten MOU with the French Ministry of Education. So I had spoken to the minister and we decided that we would have interactions of these children from these remote islands who have not even seen a car sometimes. They've never even been to the mainland. And these children to link them up with schools in France over internet. And this is where technology is also so important, to use it correctly. And it's simple technology. You don't need rocket science technology for development. You need simple technology. So we have this interconnectivity school program. We had it opened by the Minister of Education. At the end of the second year, we invited the MOFA, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Deputy Minister, to come for the closing, and closing of that particular year. But I said that, we have you, though you're not Ministry of Education, simply because you will see how borders are broken and education and understanding is taking place, not at the level of diplomacy, but at the level of children. And you have this child asked by the French student, what did you do last year, for climate? He says, well, my home was broken 4 times and I had to migrate where the school was. So we followed the school. And we had lost everything, and so much of our work, and restart our lives. What did you do? This child said, well, we couldn't go skiing. But there was no judgment. This is the beauty. This boy asked, what is skiing? He answers, what is skiing? It's a game. How do you play it? And what is snow? What is the impact of snow? What does snow do? And they answered, and they learned. No judgment, just understanding and reaching out to each other in a way which is beyond diplomacy or beyond anything that we are trying to reach at COP. We need them here. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think I want to make sure we have a few questions from the audience, but does anyone have any questions for these incredible panelists? I think there's a very wide range of experience and stories and impact. Yes, we have a question.
Thank you all for this panel. It's been amazing. I'm just curious, what is the if you had to pick one single biggest challenge facing these young entrepreneurs, what would it be, and what have you seen as the solution?
I can take one, and then maybe Hannah. I think for us, I've seen for young women in countries where there isn't an infrastructure of funding is very, very hard, and I almost think that there's a room for a global platform, and I think Technovation may step into this, where women are investing in other young women because they believe in each other, and there aren't that many women investors to begin with, and these ideas are incredible. So I think there's room for a global platform that is agnostic, and it's not connected to any government or any one corporation too. So I think power to the girls. But I don't know if Hannah wants to answer that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very much echoing what you just said about funding. We hear this time and again from young girls. They have no funding. They could have brilliant ideas, but there's no funding for them. But I would go one step farther and say the lack of comprehensive entrepreneurship support systems. There is a range of organizations that focus on skilling for entrepreneurship. There's others that focus on funding. There's others that focus on mentorship. It's fragmented. What we hear from young girls, and we work with them very, very closely, is that they need a journey, they need a pathway, they need a support system where they can get skills and mentorship and seed funding and peer-to-peer learning and support systems that kind of take them from point A to point B, where they're able to then take their ventures forward towards sustainability. This fragmentation of the entire system doesn't do young girls in entrepreneurship any good. Yeah.
Great question. Any other questions? All right, so I will try to summarize this very, very diverse panel. And I think the common theme for me was really focusing on values of the young people, and I think values of the communities. And I think that definitely resonates with Technovation's experience, where if you design a program that helps a young person find their values and build something that helps them bring back and build value to their world, then you have a really compelling solution. So I love that Runa's organization is called Friendship. The name is so welcoming and kind, and I think that's what we need in this world. So thank you to all of you for coming to this panel, for supporting us, and I hope you actually join in empowering young women in your communities. And one immediate way for them to do is to join Technovation. The competition has just started, so you can register as a mentor or inspire the young girls in your communities to participate. So thank you, everyone, and have fun at COP.